This morning we were hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita class. Vidagdha Madhava Prabhu was giving them the Hawaii Sangha, and he discussed a lot about Laghu Bhagavatamrita by Rupa Goswami, specifically, well, two translations. We have Banu Maharaj and Gopi Pranadhan Prabhu. I'm sure there's more, but those are the ones we generally see. There, now I can see all of you. Jai. And when he was discussing Laghu Bhagavatamrita by Gopi Pranadhan Prabhu, I was remembering, because it was published posthumously, that in 2010 and 11, Gopi Prabhu was giving a lot of classes from Laghu Bhagavatamrita as he was translating it. I was in the school at that time, and I was just remembering Gopi Prabhu and how he would chant the verses glorifying Srimad Bhagavatam from Sri Krishna Lila Stava. And so I thought to honor Gopi Prabhu as one of my foremost Shiksha gurus, I thought I'd just chant those verses, because he would chant them every time he gave class. It was sort of his, instead of, normally we chant Om Ganathamidam Dasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshuru Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guru, and then so on. He would chant this instead. I think he would chant it after the verse, but I'm just going to chant it now. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadhya Sarva Lokaika Drikpada Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvanto Tataditya Shri Krishna Parivartita Paramananda Partapataya Prema Varshyaksharayate Sarvada Sarva Sevyaya Shri Krishna Namostume Madheka Bando Matsangin Madguru Madmahadhanam Madnistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute Asadhu Sadhu Tadayin Atinicho Chitta Thakaram Hanamuncha Kadachin Mam Premnarit Kantayos Kura. Really beautiful verses. It's obeisances number 107, verses 412 to 416 from Krishna Lila Stava. The reading of which one attains transcendental bliss. All right, on to today's verse. If anyone wants to hear the translation to that, you can look at obeisance number 107 in Krishna Lila Stava. Today we are reading from 3rd Canto, Chapter 5, Text 21. 3-5-21. Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam. Oh, we don't have the verse, I'll just chant it. Sammata Sanugasya Yasya Jnanopadeshaya Madishad Bhagavan Vrajan. Bhavan, your good self, Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead, Nityam, eternal, Sammataha, recognized, Sa Anugasya, one of the associates, Ha, have been, Sanugasya, not just one of the associates, but one among them, anyway. Yasya, of whom, Jnana, knowledge, Upadeshaya, for instructing, Ma, unto me, Adisha, so ordered, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Vrajan, while returning to his abode. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. Purport. Jamaraj, the great controller of life after death, decides the living entity's destinies in their next lives. He is surely among the most confidential representatives of the Lord. Such confidential posts are offered to great devotees of the Lord, who are as good as his eternal associates in the spiritual sky. And because Vidura happened to be among them, the Lord, while returning to Vaikuntha, left instructions for Vidura with Maitreya Muni. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord, not to hold any administrative post, but to associate with the Lord in person, or to propagate the message of God in human society. Such empowered representatives are called Shaktavesha avatars, or incarnations invested with transcendental power of attorney. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam Sammata Sanugasya Yasya Jnanopadeshaya Madishad Bhagavan Vrajam. Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. Maitreya Muni speaking. Maitreya and Vidura, their talks comprise quite a large section of Bhagavatam. We get deep. I should have done better research to figure that out. But anyway, I know it goes at least as far as talking about Shiva and the Daksha Yajna, maybe further than that, but definitely deep into the 4th canto. And I was thinking, this name Maitreya, the son of Mitra. Mitra means friend, so the friend of all living beings is the devotee. They don't show up in the material world to accept some administrative post mentioned in the purport. There's no need for such a role to be played. Administrative posts can be taken care of by anyone. It said Duryodhana was a great king. Actually, he managed so nicely that the whole planet was being run wonderfully, but he wasn't a devotee. So, from another point of view, it was being run terribly. Because the real goal, the whole purpose of this world is for reformation. The purpose of a jail isn't for having nicely organized cells and keeping all the criminals partitioned in a way in which everyone is happily in their gold-barred cell or iron-barred cell. It's for reformation. It's hopefully that they can become cured of the disease of desire to enjoy separately from Krishna and go back to enjoying with him eternally. I thought it was kind of interesting, this concept of Bhagavan Vrajan, that, before I go there, a slight tangent. Bhagavan is a term usually reserved for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but there are, I think just a couple verses ago, Vidura referred to Maitreya as Bhagavan as well. So the associates of the Lord, your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Lord. Bhavan Bhagavato Nityam. Sammata, you're recognized as being very close to the Lord. Sometimes when a devotee is very close to the Lord, then he is given equal status. Bhagavan, one who's full in all opulences, is the description of Vishnu. One of the acharyas describes. So there's a few places in Srimad Bhagavatam where devotees are referred to as Bhagavan, but it always sticks in my mind extra concretely because I remember in Mayapur one time, I had sometimes devotees get in silly little disputes. It's really kind of goofy, but I remember one devotee was quite adamant that Bhagavan could only refer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the time I didn't have any Shastric reference, although there are numerous. But I remember thinking, oh, okay, I guess it can only refer to Krishna. But anyway, Maitreya is referred to as Bhagawan here because of his close connection with Krishna. And here Maitreya is actually glorifying Vidura, that you're one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me. So, Bhagawan Vraja, Krishna is leaving back to his own abode. But we have this statement, Vrindavanam Parityaja, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. And I've always liked this word Vraja, meaning to go. Because when Krishna, I don't know if it's intentional, but Bhagawan Vrajan, going back to his own abode, Bhagawan, he's going to Vraja. So, Vraja, going to Vraja. But Vrindavanam Parityaja, actually Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. He's always there. I'm reading in Bhagavatam right now, toward the end of the first part, in which Krishna is describing why he can't go back to Vrindavan. He's already been in Dwarka and Mathura for some time, and he's being criticized by his brother Balaram, and Uddhava is very morose. He's advising Krishna that you should go back, and even the queens, except for Satyabhama, are all expressing their recognition of the exalted level of the gopis. And when Satyabhama storms off angrily, then Krishna chastises her, and he instantly brings back, he calls her Satrajati, that you are the daughter of the foolish king, Satrajati. Anyway, nice discourses there. But it's describing, Krishna describes how he can't go back to Vrindavan because even if he were to go back, they're so absorbed in thoughts of him. One of the explanations given was that they see him even in a shadow. If they see some dark spot in the forest, they see Krishna. They actually see him. They're so absorbed in separation from him that they're living in even closer connection with him. The glories of the devotees are, it's unfathomable. It's sort of just sort of theoretical knowledge for me. But when you read these descriptions, how absorbed in thought of Krishna the devotees are, and of course, smaranam, Shravanam Kirtam Vishnu Smaranam, as one of the processes of devotional service, one is intimately connected with the Lord even in remembrance, or speaking about, or hearing about. So the devotees of Vrindavan are so absorbed. Krishna was saying, even if I went there, it wouldn't make any difference. They're already seeing me anyway. But anyway, there's a very elaborate discussion on it. But here we have this, Bhagavan Vraja, that Krishna is returning to Vrindavan. Generally, the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. We won't even go into the fall of the jiva. I'm not, Bhakti Abhay Ashram Maharaj has some nice proofs, some nice points on the matter, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm in a well, and the best thing is to figure out how to get out, not how I fell in. So, but those who are able to give us guidance on what's outside of the well are those advanced devotees who have experience of what's outside. And sometimes, generally the eternal associates of the Lord in the spiritual sky do not come to the material world. Sometimes they come, however, by the order of the Lord. And what is their mission? To propagate the message of God in human society. Such a beautiful thing that by the causeless mercy of the devotees, we get this opportunity. And Shadharma Briksha Marganugamanam. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he describes there's 20 supporting factors of devotional service. So the first 10 are positives, dues, and the second 10 are negatives. They're in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And interestingly, I don't know, I have to do a little more research as to why, but there's two different words. Sadhu Vartmanu, what is it? Anyway, in one place it's written that way, and in another place it's written Marga Anugamana, which I thought was it, because today's verse was Sanugasya, along one of the associates of the Lord. So this Anuga is one who follows. We have the Rupa Nugas. So Vartma, one who shows the path, is one way the verse is translated, or Marga Anugamana, one who follows the path. So anyway, either way you take the verse, the point being that the supporting factor of bhakti is Mahajano Yenagata Sapanta, following the footsteps of the great Mahajans. And right before that is mentioned Shaddharma Pritcha, inquiring into Shaddharma, the eternal occupation, the real purpose of human life, which is Prema Pumartamaha, having love for Krishna, having a deep connection in devotional service, which is the real purpose of asking any question. Sutta Goswami glorifies the sages headed by Shaunaka because their questions are relating to the welfare of the entire world, and only such questions and responses can actually satisfy the self. So, Sanugasya, Sammatta Sanugasya, Vidura is being recognized as one who is following in the footsteps of such great devotees, one who is Marganugamanam. Actually, I think I have the verse here. Let's see. Vartmanu Vartanam. Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam. So whether you take it Vartmanu Vartanam or Marganugamanam, either way. But we have Guru Pada Ashrayas Tasma Krishna Dikshati Shikshanam Vishwam Bhena Guru Seva Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam. Accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual master, becoming initiated by the spiritual master, and learning how to discharge devotional service from him, obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion, following the footsteps of the great acharyas under the direction of the spiritual master. So these are four of the items mentioned. And then I was another verse that pops into mind. Tanama Rupa Charitari Sukirtananam Smrityo, Kramena Rasanama Asinyoja Tishtan Brje Tadanuragi Jananugami. So here we have this Anuga again, Tadanuragi Jananugami, and we had Upadeshaya. Let's see. Today's verse, Yasya Jnana Upadeshaya. So Krishna left instructions for me to give to you. And in the nectar of instruction, it's stated that the essence of all advice, the Upadesha Sadham, the most important advice one can get, is that one should utilize one's full time, every second, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities, and eternal pastimes. Nama Rupa Charita Adi. Sukirtanana. Nicely chanting. Sukirtanana. Beautiful chanting of the Lord's names. Otherwise, there's so much kirtan, there's so many other things to glorify. Mundane music, or the glorifying the mundane acts of chivalry of some great warrior. But this is Sukirtan. This is beautiful glorification relating to Krishna, and thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind In this way, one should reside in Braj and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. Jana Anugami. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees. That's the Anugami. Follow in their footsteps, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Those who are Anuragi, who are deeply attached to Krishna, one should follow in their footsteps. And in the purport to that verse is another nice verse from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Krishnam smaram janam chasya prishtam nijasam samihitam tattat kataratas chasau kuryad vasam vraje sada. A devotee should always reside in the transcendental realm of Braj and should always engage in Krishnam smaram janam chasya prishtam, the remembrance of Sri Krishna and his beloved associates. Krishnam smaram janam cha. Also we were just singing Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Vadadhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Rani. So this Jana just means people, but connected with Krishna. Krishnam Smaram Janam Chasya. You have the Gopi Jana and you have the Braja Jana. Two types of Janas mentioned in Jai Radha Madhava that we chant each time before Bhagavatam class. And it's very, very sweet to think of the exalted level of these Janas, Gopi Jana and Braja Jana. And so by remembrance of his beloved associates, and by following in the footsteps of such associates, by entering under their eternal guidance, one can acquire an intense desire to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without that intense desire, then sometimes you desire to serve the Supreme Lord, sometimes your senses. But developing an intense desire, I'm ashamed to say I'm looking up the verse, but Akama sarvakama va moksha kama udarati tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. So whatever one's condition is, with great force, tivrena, tivra, with great force, one should perform bhakti yoga. So the devotees who are 100% dedicated to worshiping Krishna, this comes automatically. It's not something that they need to separately endeavor for. Actually, in the beginning, before even mentioning these 20 items that support one's devotional service, Rupa Goswami points out that there's spontaneous, raganuga, and there's vaidhi bhakti. That for the devotees who are spontaneously attracted to the service of the Lord, then there's no need for rules. I was just hearing, actually, I saw Asham Maharaj's comment on Namras's podcast. He interviewed recently His Holiness Tripurari Maharaj, and this was a point being discussed by him in that really nice podcast. I think I still have 20 minutes left to listen to, but I was listening to it. When did you guys come with Maruti? Last night? The night before? Anyway, not last night, the night before last, I was listening to this podcast, and Tripurari Maharaj was describing that, there can't be, where there are rules, there's no love, or at least it's not fully manifest. So the reason being that when there's full love, then you don't need rules. You don't need to tell someone, don't do this. They're already absorbed in loving reciprocation. Everything they do is going to be a perfect expression of their full love for Krishna or for whomever it is, however you want to point out. Smartavya satatam vishnu, vismartavya najataja. All of these rules and regulations, vidhis and nishedas, they're kinkara. They're servants to the basic principle of always remember Krishna, never forget him. So if you're already on that platform of always remembering Krishna, then you can do no wrong. There's no scope. It's only when you slip from that platform. You know, Bharat Maharaj, he's so absorbed in bhava, practically on the level of prema. But then his heart is so soft, he sees the baby deer, and for a moment, instead of thinking of Krishna, he's thinking of the deer. And then the attention becomes diverted, then some mistake can be there. And therefore, when he came back as Jada Bharat, voluntarily Jada, he just didn't want any chance for that slipping to take place again. Let me pretend to be dumb. Let me pretend to be, you know, his father's instructing him, you wash your hands after passing. He would wash his hands before. And his father was so frustrated, oh, you know, I'm trying to teach him all these Vedic rituals, all these, you know, mantras. I want him to be a good Brahmin boy. But he was past that platform. Who cares about all these rules and regulations? Does that mean we neglect them? You know, oh, okay, let me also walk around and with dirty hands and inappropriate behavior? No. But on the platform of Raganuga, then where there's love, there's no need for these rules. He's already on a platform of constant remembrance. But so anyway, Rupa Goswami prefaces these statements, these 10 supporting factors of devotional service, by there's these two sides. But for those of us in Vaidhi Bhakti, then Guru Padashaya, accepting, taking shelter of the lotus feet of Guru. Wow, actually, there was such a beautiful discussion recently. And Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, my Guru Maharaj gives classes through the Tawako channel, hosted by Tawako, New Jersey. And there was a discussion in the second canto. It's discussing Shripati, that Krishna is the pati of Lakshmi. And she was referred to as Pada, somehow she was referred to as serving his lotus feet. And she's the exemplar of Pada Sevana. When you get these 9 processes of devotional service, Pada Sevana is described as being Lakshmi. And so I had a question, and it's not a novelty, it's a question that has gone around amongst devotees, but I was just curious to hear Maharaj's clarification, that we have Dasya and we have Pada Sevana. Pada Sevana seems very localized. It's very specific. You know, one of the processes of devotional service is I serve Krishna's feet. And Dasya seems very general. You have Hanuman as the exemplar. He's serving as Lord Ram's umbrella. He's serving as his consultant. He's serving, going off to Lanka to burn it down. In so many ways, he's serving the Lord's purpose. And then Pada Sevana just seemed so localized, so specific. And so I asked, what are we to understand the differentiation between these two? And also, is Pada Sevana, you know, I'm worshiping the Lord in this capacity. What scope is there for just serving his lotus feet? And the response that I appreciated the most from Maharaj is he mentioned Prabhupada, that the spiritual master is sometimes referred to as Prabhupada. We have Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, and most prominently for us, our Srila Prabhupada. The devotee who's very dear to Krishna and who's situated at his lotus feet. So one way of recognizing Pada Sevana is serving the spiritual master. That the spiritual master is tightly connected to Krishna's lotus feet, and by serving him, then one becomes very close to Krishna's lotus feet. And I just thought it was such a beautiful meditation, that Guru Padashaya, it's sort of levels of feet worship. Guru Pada and then Krishna's Pada Sevana. But Sashila Jiva Charana, and when we're worshiping Srila Jiva Goswami and Harinama, was studying Sanskrit grammar, one of the prayers that we say is we're worshiping his feet. And one time Navadwip Maharaj told a story. I don't remember the exact context, but in any case, Prabhupada had mentioned feet means person. There can't be an impersonal conception of the absolute when we're talking about feet. Feet means person, so worshiping the feet means Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these Vaidhi Bhakti regulations mentioned are for the benefit of those of us who are not on the platform of pure devotional service, who are not on the platform of spontaneously being attracted to Krishna. For us, it's necessary to rise early, to chant our prescribed number of rounds. And interestingly, the Goswamis, a couple of them in particular, I'm not remembering which, but were known for being extra punctilious in their execution of devotional service according to rules and regulations. We don't see, we see sometimes examples of not following, Gorky Shordas Babaji drinking out of a skull in a graveyard to avoid unnecessarily contacting materialistic people. But in general, the Goswamis were actually extra careful in the rules and regulations, not thinking, oh, I'm beyond that platform, let me neglect them. So it's interesting, when you see the example of the great Vaishnavas, they're actually extra careful about these rules and regulations. Yeah, Sankhya Puraka Namagan, yeah, they're chanting a specific number of rounds. In central New Jersey, where I took initiation, there's Chotha Panchatattva deities that were gifted to Madhupati Prabhu and company, the CNJ devotees, during the 2004 Maha-Abhishek installation of Panchatattva. And they're from the same metal used to cast Panchatattva deities. So very wonderful history. I mean, of course, Panchatattva is Panchatattva, and deities worshipped sincerely. Krishna manifests through that form. But even so, some deities are extra special. And that Chotha Panchatattva was quite special. And during my initiation ceremony, I kept kind of peeking over. I was thinking, just wow, so wonderful, Panchatattva's mercy. And here in Hawaii, we have the first Panchatattva in the West. Prabhupada came to Hawaii and he saw, they need some mercy over here. They're already in the enjoying spirit in Hawaii. They definitely need some extra mercy. So we got Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sanugasya, with his anugas, with his close associates, his close followers, giving us the example of how to serve him. Sometimes it's difficult to know how to serve properly without a good example. And so Krishna came as his own devotee to provide the ultimate example of how to serve. And that's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, giving us the highest example, the ultimate manifestation of service to Krishna. And reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, I found more and more. Unfortunately, I've only recently started seriously studying Chaitanya Charitamrita. But you sort of get a layout for any Bhagavatam class by reading CC. CC puts together verses of similar nature, and just by reading it, you get like very deep when you first start boring into the earth, you get the surface levels, you get some understanding. Deeper, you mine deeper and deeper, and it just opens up new layers of understanding. And so CC compacts these different ideas, like that section I was reading now. It's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's instructions, and anyway, I don't even remember the section, but just all the verses are coming together that are related to one another, and it's just it's so nice to read. Chaitanya Charitamrita is so full of nectar.
Chapter 22.
What's that?
Chapter
Is that it?
Part of the Sanatana, chapter 22 includes the 64 on Dasa.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it could be there. Yeah. Tivrena bhakti yogina. So by that intense worship of Krishna, then whether you have desires or no desires or desires for liberation, then at least worship Krishna, and all of those ulterior motives will disappear. One who is udaradhi, one who has a broader outlook. Sorry, just reading the purport to that verse. One verse Dhruvada Prabhu taught me, which I've always liked. It's very sweet, if I can remember. Kritam akritam na kritam kritam cha sarvam. Kritam akritam na kritam kritam cha sarvam. How does it begin? Udadadhi reminded me of it. There's a word in the verse that mentions one who is very knowledgeable, one who is unless one takes shelter of the lotus feet of, how does it go? All right, we're gonna find it. I can't start a verse like that and then not quote it. Let's find it. Kritam akritam. Kritam akritam kritam chasarvam. Oh, I just remembered it. I can't find it, but I remembered it. Yadi madhu matana todam grisevam hridibadadhati jahati va viveki. One who is a viveki, one who is very knowledgeable. Jahati va viveki. Yes, yadi madhu matana todam grisevam hridibadadhati jahati va viveki. Tadakilam api duskritam triloke kritam akritam nakritam kritam chisarvam. So even for one who is very knowledgeable, unless he's taken shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, it's as if he's, even if he's done no sinful activities, it's as if he's done every sinful activity in the three worlds. Duskritam triloke, every single sinful activity that's available in all three worlds. Unless one takes shelter of the lotus feet of Madhu Matana, the killer of Madhu, then his position is wretched. It doesn't matter how powerful, how wonderful you are, until you take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, then where are you? You're lost. The Brahmanas are lamenting their position that these coward boys came asking for some food, and we were too busy in our Vedic rituals, and we couldn't even see. Whereas our wives immediately ran to serve. So that's the real position. Madhu Matana. Unless one comes to this platform, and even greater than worship of Krishna is worship of his devotees. When I told my father I had taken initiation, he immediately quoted Tvad bhritya bhritya paricharaka bhritya bhritya bhrityasya bhritya imam smaralokanata. Bhritya 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 bhritya. 7 times, servant of the servant of the servant of the servant. And it popped into my head because this Yadi Madhu Matana, the killer of Madhu, the verse begins, Maj Janmana Palamidam Madhu Kaitabhari, the killer of Madhu and Kaitaba. Maj Janmana Palamidam, that I only get the fruit, the real fruit of this. I feel like looking it up to give you guys a proper translation. But Mad Prarthaniya, Madanugraha, Esha Eva, Tvad Bhritya Bhritya Paricharaka Bhritya Bhritya. From Mukundamala Stotra, that my only prayer, Prarthana, we have Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Prarthana, his prayers, Madanugraha, that your mercy will manifest on me, that I may become the servant of the 7 times removed servant of your servant. Dasa, Dasa, Dasa. That's the real mercy. Is the Prabhupada says, the more times removed, the greater your position. So, it was interesting actually. When I was traveling as the traveling servant of Maharaj, not that I ever expected any praise or service, but it was interesting to see the different houses we would go to when devotees recognized that I was even there, or just went right to serving Maharaj. Of course, most appropriate is to serve Maharaj, but sometimes I would see devotees would take special care to see that I was taken care of. And not that I wanted the service, but just to me it just glorified them. That wow, this person is so humble that they want to serve the servant of the servant. And it was quite amazing. A few examples stick out in my head. One of them being Guru Gauranga Prabhu, who's actually, on his advice, Maharaj gave me the name Radhesa Das. But when I went to his house, it was amazing. Senior godbrother of Maharaj's, they're discussing, they're good friends. But then he also gave special attention to see that I was taken care of. And when we left, he gave Dakshini to Maharaj, and then also gave me some Lakshmi. He said, here, take care of yourself. And it was so sweet, Of course, I just gave it to Maharaj, but but it was really sweet. And sometimes, we see that the Kanishta level of understanding, never mind serving Maharaj, just directly to Krishna. The Kanishta devotee walks in, they see themselves and the deities. They want to serve the deities. They have some faith. They're definitely devotees, but they don't recognize the other devotees. And therefore, it's very easy to commit offenses. To rise above that platform, to recognize the service of the other devotees, to recognize opportunities to serve those devotees, then one starts making advancement very quickly. The more times removed, the higher your position. And then it's much more difficult to commit offenses when you're conscious of other people. I remember when I was a little boy, and I'm seeing it now that I have my son Maruti, he's 3 years old, how unconscious they can be of their surroundings. And I remember my father grabbing me in a supermarket. I think I was flailing around or walking backwards, and he grabbed my arm and he said, look around, be aware. You're bumping into people. And it was the first time in my life that I really thought, there's other people. Obviously you recognize there's other people, but it was the first time that I actually, at least in my head, conceptualized that I have to be aware of my surroundings so that I'm not bumping into people. And when we bump into people in devotional service, rub egos or have conflicts, then it's very easy to commit offenses. So just like my father grabbed my arm and said, be aware of other people. It's the same in devotional service. Someone, when you read the verse or someone points out, be aware of the other Vaishnavas. Then one can make much faster advancement and not be inclined to commit offenses. When one's self-interest is prominent, then the other devotees become a hindrance to one's sense gratification. So much so that Duryodhana felt greatly offended by Vidura, and he immediately pointed out his parentage, that you're like a servant, you're like a dog in this house. Here we are, the royal sons of the proper kings, Pandu and Dhritarashtra, and you're the son of the servant. Ironically, the servant, I've forgotten Vidura's mother's name, but she wasn't disturbed by Vyasadev's appearance at all. Pandu's mother turned white with fright, and Pandu came out albino. Dhritarashtra's mother, Madri? Ambika. Ambalika, and?
Amba, who has another story.
Okay. But yeah, so Ambika, she closed her eyes, she didn't want to see Vyasadeva, and so Dhritarashtra was born blind. But Vidura's mother had no problem, and here we have Vidura with no ailments, and yet Duryodhana is criticizing him. You're like a dog in this house. You don't belong here. And this is a neophyte mentality. For him, his ego is all in all, his position, his power, and therefore he's very quick to offend the great Vaishnavas. And from Vidura's point of view, wonderful. He didn't take any offense at all. For him it was, such a botheration that I have to be an advisor in this assembly of idiots. They're all here. No one's focused on serving Krishna. We have this huge family feud in which I have to give them advice and I have to keep, pointing out what the right path is. Now is my opportunity to take off. It was a wonderful opportunity for him. The Brahmana who's not allowed to enter Srivasa's kirtan, he sees Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the bathing ghat and he curses him. You'll never have any material prosperity, any material happiness. Jai! Kalakanya curses Narada Muni, you'll never be able to be in any one place. Jai! When the devotees are cursed, Krishna twists it to favor them. Fortune favors the devotees. Or when Krishna takes everything away, it's a special favor. Everything Krishna does for the devotees is a special favor. So for Vidura, it was an opportunity to leave this poisonous counsel and go to the various holy places and ultimately meet Maitreya Muni, in which we have Shaddharma Pritcha. We have inquiries into the absolute truth. So, are there any Shaddharma Pritchas or Shaddharma clarifications, or any thoughts on these wonderful verses? If anyone has any further elucidations or comments. Mother, grandmother.
Okay, in closing, because this is always relevant, could you give us some words of encouragement via Shastric evidence of for chanting Hare Krishna? Because sometimes it seems like there's nothing happening. Sometimes it seems like a parrot reciting, even though trying to concentrate.
By sound, one is liberated. 3 times repeated in the Vedas. And the highest sound vibration is the Mahamantra. Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtan. Sankirtana, Yogya Sankirtana prior. What's the second one? Yeah, this Mahamantra is the most powerful. In the description of Ajamil, there's one purport in which Prabhupada is describing that chanting, even once, removes I'm trying to remember if it was sinful reactions from past, present, and future. Let's find it. I was on a walk with Jadvaita Maharaj. His mother had just passed, and he was feeling like he wished he could have done more at the time we were passing. COVID restrictions, you can't have devotees in the hospice chanting. They had a mantra machine. There was a picture of Krishna and 4 of the Ashtasaki, 4 of them. But he had written to Burijan Prabhu, and in reply, Burijan Prabhu had said, he wasn't even able to be there at the time of his mother's passing. So he said, how glorious that you were able to be there. And he quoted a verse from the 6th canto, and it states, In the Shastras, it is said that if one chants the holy name of the Lord even once, the reactions of past, present, or future sinful life do not affect him. So sometimes it's easy to become a little bit monotonous in our chanting, kind of like the parrot repeating Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But then when the claws of death come to cat, he immediately forgets what he's chanting. But when we're conscious of the power of what we're chanting, when we think about that the reactions of sinful activity, past, present, and future, can be eliminated by this chanting. Abhinava namino, that Krishna is present in his name, that in the absolute sense, there's no difference between the sound vibration and Krishna himself, and how much it behooves us to pay attention when we're chanting. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Yes.
I just attended a Japa workshop with Mahaprabhu. It was online, which was very convenient. And he's having another one in a short time, but the time frame is not convenient for her running. But one thing that he was saying that I found it to be very beneficial is to connect with the emotion while chanting. And that's done through our praying for that connection to Krishna. Because it is an ascending process. We can't just attain it, we have to beg for it. And I found that to be very helpful, because the more the mind becomes absorbed in begging for the mercy of Krishna, the more inclined Krishna is to give it to me. Like Prabhupada says, the child crying for the mother. And that cry, you know that cry, it's just like, there's nothing that can stop a mother from going to her child when a child is completely distressed and dependent on her.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thought. Sometimes it's very easy for me to get lost in the logical side of things, to really think about it from a Shastric point of view, what we're doing. But at the end of the day, it's an emotional connection with Krishna. At the end of the day, it's a personal connection. It's not, you don't have to read a book to understand that you love your mother, or that you need, that a child needs its mother's help. It's just crying out, please, I'm helpless without you. Vritrasur, ajata paksha eva matram kriga, stanyam yata vatsatara kshudharta, priyam priyeva vyushitam vishanna. And then the most important line, of course, runs away from me. Manoravindaksha didrikshate tvam. He's praying that, I'm waiting for an opportunity to render service to you, just like a baby bird is waiting for its mom, or a calf awaiting the time of milking, or a lover is waiting her beloved to satisfy her. Manoravindaksha didrikshate tvam. I'm waiting for an opportunity to see you, which means to serve you. And so that emotional connection, recognizing oneself as ajata paksha, like a bird who hasn't hatched, who hasn't developed its ability to fly. Otherwise, the other way that it happens is you're put into that helpless position by Krishna. So I've often, and I must admit it's slightly from a platform of fear, but I've often thought, let me surrender now before I'm forced to. You're going to surrender. No one can avoid death. No one can avoid losing his material prosperity. At some point, it will be taken from you. So before health is taken from you, before King Kulashekar is praying, before this kapha, vata, and pitta are blocking my throat, before that time comes, let me chant now. Let my life, prana, prayana, samaya, kapha, vata, pitta. Before that time comes, let me chant now. And so it's kind of a nice meditation that, I have all facilities now to really surrender, to cry out for Krishna, develop that emotional connection. And attending japa workshops. What an opportunity. We have devotees like Mahatma Prabhu, like Buddhijan Prabhu, who've dedicated a lot of time to putting together these courses. I attended Mahatma Prabhu's course in 2008. They're still going over a decade later. So imagine all of the input devotees have given to these classes, as chant with other devotees, attend the workshops, read more. All of these things support support one's chanting. There was one verse we were reading in one of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes. There was a purport in one of those second chapter verses that one's senses come under control by serving the order of the spiritual master. And by serving the orders of the spiritual master, one controls the senses. One needs to control the senses to serve the spiritual master. And by serving the spiritual master, one's senses come under control. It's a sort of cyclical thing. But each one sort of bounces you up further. And all of devotional service is like that. It's sort of a funny, in mundane physics, you have a depreciating, I don't quite know the laws of physics so well, but if you roll a marble around in a circle, the momentum stops at some point. But in spiritual life, it's like flicking the marble and it keeps speeding up. It's just the opposite. Instead of losing energy, one becomes enervated more and more in devotional service, the more one practices any of the angas of devotional service. So it's oftentimes one can find that when one's japa is lacking focus, there's something else that's also lacking. One isn't reading, or one isn't finding time to serve the other Vaishnavas, or one isn't hearing. And so sometimes by doing any one of them, even by just chanting more, one desires to read more. As one reads more, one wants to perform some service. As one performs some service in all of these, one is remembering Krishna more. So I think those are some practical points in chanting. And ultimately, just try to hear yourself chant sincerely. And really just try to hear the name. Sometimes we overcomplicate it, and at the end of the day, just hearing Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just by hearing one chants more and more. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. And now another practice of devotional service that helps us remember Krishna, taking prasad, and Krishna Bora Doyamoy. This is the Bora Doyamoy. This is the great mercy of Krishna upon us to curb that wicked tongue.
Is it appropriate to say the prayer now?